So today we're going to take something that's very familiar in our community, a plant that many of our students know. So we're going to use a little bit of place-based education. We're going to do a little bit of culture. We're also going to try and be very student-centered and do some student engagement. So we're gonna start with this very simple plant that's here in the community. It's planted all in front of Nanakuli Library. You can find it on the beach. It's the Naupaka. And many of the students are familiar with the Naupaka, at least the Naupaka Kakai. You can bring in a branch. Students can talk about what they know about the plant because they may know some of the things that we want to teach them. So we're going to start with this plant, the Naupaka, something that we're going to take in several different directions to show you how you can take something that's familiar out in the community and turn it into a cool lesson. Okay? You can get rid of me. Bye. So there are two. The whole basis of the story about the Naupaka are the two varieties of Naupaka. There's a Naupaka Kahakai and a Naupaka Kuahivi. You can do a real quick observation kind of lesson here using thinking maps about similarities and differences. You can ask them if they know the story of the Naupaka, what differences they notice in the plants, how are they similar, how are they different. And for older children, you could talk about how science and myth are related. Many times, traditional knowledge, such as Hawaiian traditional stories or what are called mythology, are kind of downplayed as being superstitious or ignorant kind of ways to explain what's happening in the world. But if you take a look at the definition of myth and science, you can see that myth is a story that concerns some aspect of nature or society or people or the earth that cannot be explained, and therefore people, based on their observations, make up a story that explains why things are the way they are. Science is not much different. It is a system of knowledge that's concerned with things in the physical world, um, and tries to through observation and experimentation explain why things are the way they are. So both myth and science are a man's attempt to explain those things which are kind of mystical and magical to them. So if you took a look at, and you can have a discussion with students about these two plants, why you would think they were related, what kind of story you can make up about them. Some of them may already know the Naupaka story, but you can talk about myth and science with some older students. You can also talk about the tradition, the Hawaiian tradition of makavalu. So, related to science, while traditional Hawaiian society did not include sophisticated scientific instruments, we did have our eyes. So, makavalo is a practice of being eight-eyed, using the keen art of observation over time to notice things about the natural world and to organize them in a way that so they could all be put together and make sense. Um, this is kind of a taxonomy created by Edith Kanako Oli Foundation through some research, and there are three houses into which knowledge is organized: Papahuli Lani, which are things from the head height and above, sun, moon, stars, weather; Papahuli Honua, those things below your feet, rocks, volcanism, ocean; and Papahana Moku, all things that reproduce and have offspring and procreate. So, in the traditional sense, that's how things were organized. Um, so, when uh, you can also introduce this as just literature and a traditional story that explains a phenomenon. So this is a YouTube video of the story Naupaka, uh, retold by Nona Beamer. Naupaka is a traditional story that many people know that there are different versions of. It's in the form of a book, but if you can't get the book, you can get this YouTube video. The nice thing about it is read by Nona Beamer, who is no longer with us. She has a very soothing kind of voice, and you can talk to your students about myth or science, and and use the story as kind of the basis of it, or as an example of a myth if you were doing a unit on myths and writing myths and mythology.
Hello, this is the story of Naupaka by Nona Beamer.
So that's the story. So you could give students access to both scientific and traditional kind of stories about the Naupaka. So here's some websites that have some scientific information as well as some versions of the Naupaka story for the Naupaka Kai, the Naupaka Kohivi. And you might give them this information, or you might have them look up this information, do a little research. You can have them do some note taking, facts, similarities and differences. You might have them look at specific things like leaves, flowers, where it grows, what it's used for. So, you can use this one plant, which is very familiar to students, and go in many different directions: science, story writing, um, comparing mythology and science, traditional knowledge and scientific knowledge. So, there are many directions you can go with this from this one plant that they're very familiar with. And so this is just a very small example of how you can use the place that the students live, use the things that are familiar to them in this place to teach them many related concepts, both specific to the plant and bigger concepts as well. So this is just a little example using the Napaka plant. Mahalo.